My name is Mary Scott, and I'm going to do a presentation to you today about what's in your toolbox. This is an Alzheimer's and dementia training to just give you a little extra tools, so when you have an interaction with somebody with dementia, you will have the correct tools in your toolbox. And after this presentation, if you have questions about it, please give me a call in my office at 541-704-4297. So let's get started. So what is normal aging for all of us? Forgetting things but remembering them later? That happens to me all the time. Making occasional errors in your checkbook? Messing up on a day of the week but figuring it out later? You know, sometimes you schedule an appointment and then you forget you had an appointment, but then you remember, oh yeah, I did have an appointment on that day. It's normal to need occasional help with the microwave or the TV remote. Our TV remotes often look like our cell phones and our other remotes that we might have in our house. So those sometimes it's very normal to have those confusions with those things. Making a bad decision once in a while, that happens to all of us. Feeling weary of work, family, or social gatherings. Getting really tired of those kind of interactions, very normal for all of us. And then to develop specific ways of doing things and becoming irritable when the routine is disrupted. As we age, we get more into a set pattern of how we like things to be done. Maybe it's every morning we get up and we do the dishes from the night before. And if someone comes in and disrupts your pattern, that can be a bit irritating for you. Finding the right word now and then, that is very common as we age, trying to figure out what we're trying to find in our brains. Misplacing things such as glasses or keys. Some people have this happen to them their whole life. It's not necessarily an aging thing, but these things do happen that we've laid something down and we can't quite figure out where we put them. And then slower reaction times. As we age, our body is slowing down a little bit. So our reaction time for when we receive the information in our brain to when our body actually reacts to it does slow down. Some more normal aging kind of things. Sometimes having trouble finding the right word, but then you remember it later. Or seeing people and you weren't quite know who they were, but then again later, you go, oh, aha, that's who that was. Forgetting names. I mean, that happens to me all the time. I'll see somebody, but I won't remember their name, but that is very common. Messing up on appointments now and then. Forgetting you had one on this day, but you have it on a different day or a different time. Very, very common, very normal. Again, misplacing your glasses or the TV remote. Going into a room and forgetting why you went in there, especially if you get interrupted along the way. So if you're going in from one room to the other room and then something stops you, whether it's an animal or another person, you might forget why you went into that room in the first place. Making occasional errors in your checkbook. Now we can check our balances online, which many people do, but adding and subtracting errors, that becomes very normal as we age. Feeling weary of work and family and social gatherings, like I had said before. And then when these things happen, your cortisol levels go up, and then we all get stressed out because we're thinking something's wrong with us and we don't know why, and we're thinking we're getting some kind of Alzheimer's and dementia, but these are very normal aging type of things. So things that are not normal when it comes to aging, memory lapses that affect your normal daily routines. If you have a daily routine and you forget something major in the middle of that routine, tends to be a normal type of aging. Asking the same information over and over to somebody, but you didn't remember you asked it the first time. Mixing up present information with made up or past information, that's called confabulation. You're getting mixed up with the things that are going on in present day, but you're using information that you have in your past memory and combining it. Paying some of your bills over and over or not paying any bills. Keeping track of dates, months, seasons, and the passages of time. This becomes very, very easy to forget and track, especially when people retire. They don't have a schedule so much anymore, so it's really easy to just forget what day it is or what month it is. Your mood goes up and down very easily, and you get upset more easily. So this is not a part of normal aging. So that is something you might want to be consider or talk to your doctor about. Blaming others for your lost items. We often put things away and then forget where we put them, and then somebody stole them. Somebody moved this. I know I put it here. That's not a part of normal aging. Withdrawal from work or social activities. Again, complete withdrawal, hibernating in your home. So with the shades down and the doors shut and not coming out at all. So a complete withdrawal. Not able to retrace your steps to find something. For example, how many of you have put your parked at one spot in the parking lot of a store, such as Walmart, but when you came out, you couldn't quite find your car. So you have to retrace your steps of where you were and how you find your car. So sometimes having a car with a decal on the back is very helpful. Then you can kind of track where it is. I have kayak racks on the top of my car. So when I come out of a store, I automatically look for those. Going into a room for something but never remembering what it was once you got there. Again, retracing your steps to back where can you retrace your steps? And if you can't, that's a forgotten item. Forgetting information someone just told you a little while ago. Again, this is not normal aging. So, and then reading but not comprehending anything that you're reading. Again, this is a really good sign of dementia starting. So more of not normal aging, not able to think the same as you used to. You might have some gaps in your memory. Unable to do the things you did before, such as follow a recipe, making a banana bread, for example. You might have had it down really good, but then as you are trying to follow the recipe, it gets all muddy and you get all confused about how to make it. So you're not doing things quite as well as you did before. Making a meal for somebody, you're having guests for lunch or for dinner. Getting all that food on the table, the hot food hot and the cold food cold, all at the same time so people can sit down and eat. That's a high-level task. And those are some of the tasks that start to break down as our aging and the not normal part of aging takes over. Unable to get started on a task. You want to think about something, but you don't know how to get started. You don't know how to get that task even started. You can't get to that next level. Sometimes getting stuck in a moment of time and you can't get out of it. You just stay in that moment and you keep rethinking of it over and over and over. And then you're unable to think things out and problem solve. That moment in time, for example, you're stuck in it, but you can't get beyond that. You're unable to think things out. Unable to successfully place a person that you may see, and you may have seen them yesterday or a week ago, but you can't quite place who that was. Words won't come even with a visual, verbal, or touch cues. So example might be something as simple as a napkin. You know, you can't quite find the word for what that is, and people may have to physically tell you what it is. Again, confused about the past and the present. You're, again, thinking of things that happened long ago, but you're bringing them forward to the present and making them part of your normal daily life now. Again, that confabulation is very much a part of dementia and the early dementia. Personality or behaviors that will be different than you've had your whole life. Maybe you were an easygoing person your whole life, and now you find yourself to be a little bit more testy, or the person you're with is a little bit more testy and they never used to be. So you ask, is it dementia or is it mild cognitive impairment? it's time probably to get checked out, make it an appointment with a doctor, get some testing done, just to see that you don't have maybe another infection. A lot of times infections can cause aging type of behaviors. So there are over 65 different types of dementia out there, and dementia is defined as the loss of intellectual functions, remembering, thinking, reasoning, severe enough to interfere with your everyday life. So the brain is actually shrinking as brain cells die. There is less communication between the neurotransmitters happening in our brain. So as those transmissions between cells decrease, brain cells actually die, and the brain actually starts to shrink. All dementia gets worse, all dementia is unique, and all dementia is terminal. Nothing's going to reverse it, nothing's going to stop it, it's just going to continue on. So as brain cells in our brain are communicating, all the information processed in the brain is nothing more than electricity passing from one neuron after neuron and pausing only to be converted into chemical energy as it leaps across each synapse. So this is how information is getting from one brain cell to the other brain cell and continuing on through your body, such as you had a thought to actually just walk. Something as simple as walking gets into your brain cells and it transmits over and over to brain cells so your legs actually start to move. These are some things that mimic dementia. So you may have had some of these, you may have some of these, you may know somebody. An infection, the number one infection that we look at and we see here in our work here at Mennonite Village is a urinary tract infection. It's one of the first things that we ask the doctor to check because it can cause immediate behaviors. People are falling more, their cognition is off. And so we want to get a check for that because there's antibiotics that can certainly help with a UTI. Depression is something that I'm sure we've all gone through from time to time. It's defined as you can't think, you can't remember, it's not worth it, loss of functions, mood swings, changing your sleep habits, personality changes. You're just blue all the time. Again, get some help, get some counseling, get out there and be active. The more you're walking, the more you're engaged in physical activity, the more you're helping somebody else, it really does help with depression. But there are medications out there if you talk to your doctor. Dehydration, something that we need to really think about 24/7, 365 days of the year. It can happen in the winter as easy as it can happen in the summer. If you're not drinking your water or your liquid every single day, you can easily get dehydrated. And again, it will cause mild confusion. So the more liquid you drink, the better off you're going to be. Your cells need to be hydrated so they can function more appropriately. Medications. Many older folks mix and match their meds, and they are looking for that magic cure for whatever is ailing them. They watch the commercials. So often we see a misuse of medications causing dementia-like symptoms, or not taking prescribed meds, or taking too many, or not taking enough. So these are things that you really, really have to be careful with because medications are pretty serious. And so you really need to be watching out with whatever you're taking, with whatever your spouse might be taking to see if it's actually doing the job it was meant to do. And you can always call your pharmacist or call your doctor. Vitamin B12, folic acid, and then you can add vitamin D to this list. If you're deficient in any of those, you will see a cognitive impairment type of situation. Vitamin B12, definitely you become more anemic if you're really low on vitamin B12. You're more lethargic. You kind of have that bluesy, depressive kind of attitude. But it's a simple blood test. And oftentimes older folks can get a shot for vitamin B12, and it's amazing how well that can help. And your thyroid hormones, many of us, many women out there, your thyroid hormone, if it's too low, you're on thyroid medication, which kind of helps your thyroid function a lot better. If it's too low, you're going to, again, be, your cognition is going to be off a little bit. You're not going to be thinking as clearly as you would. And if it's too high, it's rapid, and that's a lot more rare than too low. So those are all things that mimic types of dementia, and those are things you definitely need to get checked out by your doctor. Some of the most common irreversible dementias out there, the number one still is Alzheimer's disease. It's a very slow progressive disease. It can start as early as your 30s. If it starts earlier, in your 30s, 40s, or 50s, it will progress a lot faster. People with Alzheimer's disease have a distinct pattern of behaviors, of conversation and communication with them. That is, it's when you work around them or you're with them a lot, you can kind of figure out that it's definitely an Alzheimer's type dementia. And the doctor can also do some testing to see if it's more of an Alzheimer's type dementia than another type. But they can't be 100% sure until an autopsy and the brain is looked at. But it's the most common. Although really close on its heels is multi-infarct dementia, which is also called vascular dementia. We see a lot of people here with vascular dementia, folks who have had some mini strokes or some strokes in their life, and they can do a brain scan and to see that. And they can actually look at the brain to see what parts of the brain are damaged and pretty much can diagnose that vascular dementia. The communication with vascular dementia is a little bit different than with Alzheimer's disease. Their communication is a little bit clearer, their articulation is a little bit clearer, and the dementia process is more like a stair step. So it's not a slow, steady decline. It's kind of like a decline, stop for a while, decline, drop a little bit, steady for a while, and decline again. So it's kind of like a stair-step decline. But some of the behaviors are similar to that of Alzheimer's disease. Frontal temporal lobe dementia is also another very common. It used to be called Pick's disease. It is no longer called Pick's disease. But it's where the frontal part of your brain is damaged first, and it goes into the temporal part of your brain. And so the people with frontal temporal lobe dementia have a lot of communication struggles, trying to find the right word, and it takes them a very long time to get the words out. And they may forget what they're trying to say by the time they get to what they're actually saying. It's a very frustrating disease for the person going through it. Huntington's disease is pretty rare. It's almost like the person has an invisible box around them, and you can't quite get too close to them because they will lash out. And there's different severity levels with Huntington's disease. And they walk almost like they're drunk, but they're not. It's the type of disease that it is. And they're very fixated on their things. Things have to be in a certain order. You can't really touch their stuff. It's a very challenging disease for any type of caregiver. Parkinson's disease, as we all know, has really grown in popularity, more so with Michael J. Fox kind of leading the way and making people more aware of it, and not so much popular, but more awareness of Parkinson's disease. And a lot of people with Parkinson's disease don't have dementia associated with it. They have a lot of very clear thoughts and very clear communication, but their movements are very staggered, very slow, kind of stooped over, sometimes shuffling. But 40% of the people with Parkinson's also have dementia associated with it. And so they kind of have a double whammy of dementia and Parkinson's, making it a very challenging disease for those people going through it. Lewy body dementia is a type of dementia that has the Lewy body proteins in the brain attacked where communication can't get through. Oftentimes, somebody diagnosed with Lewy body disease leans to one side or the other when they're walking. They have a really hard time grasping on an object. And a lot of the dementia-type medications don't work for somebody with Lewy body. So it's hard sometimes to diagnose it because they're often diagnosed with Parkinson's because they have a lot of the Parkinson symptoms along with the Alzheimer's type memory loss associated with it. So there's a lot of that going on, and it takes a really good neurologist to get down in there and diagnose your that type of dementia. And it takes a lot of questions and a lot of sometimes the tests. And so a new one that is currently being looked at is called, and it's a new one that is currently being looked at, and it's called a dementia that attacks a person early in life, and it doesn't necessarily have a name yet, but it's starting to be looked at and by researchers, but I don't have the name to tell you what it is, but it's just out there on the horizon that there's a new type of dementia that's being looked at by researchers. And as dementia overtakes the brain, this is what happens. We lose our information on the left part of our brain, but we retain it on the right. So the left side of our brain has all of those speaking, reading, writing, listening, grammar skills, narrative skills, the comparison skills, analyzing, reasoning, logic, all of that stuff is in the left side of our brain. Those are the things that we lose first. So the things that we retain on the right side of the brain is organizing information, abstract meaning, context, spatial relationships, visual information, face recognition, intuition, emotion, imagination, music and art awareness. So the things that people retain a lot until the end of their life is music. Music is kind of in the center part of their brain, and it goes on, and you can sing to people long after they've been unable to speak. They can sometimes sing back. So you might be able to sing good morning to somebody, and they would be able to sing it back and mirror what you did, because music and rhythm are there to almost the end. A lot of people know that those old songs that they grew up with, because that's where all that long-term memory is stored right there. So they can really help with really tracking things in the right side of the brain. But injuries to the right side of the brain can cause impairment in attention, left side neglect, memory issues, decreased awareness and deficits, loss of the big picture thinking, altered creative or music perception. Again, it's where is that dementia in your brain, and how is it traveling? When you're working with someone who has a diagnosis of dementia, you need to have a lot of tools in your toolbox. So, what's in your toolbox? So these are some of the lists of things that you might want to have in your toolbox. Learning the person's history, knowing who they were before they got the disease, writing it down, making notes, keeping a diary of things. You might, as a spouse, you probably known them their whole life. Learning all that history again and using that to your advantage. Learning their previous personality. Were they always kind and caring and sweet and demure? Or were they a little more testy and a little more aggressive or a little much more in control? Learn that personality of the person, because you'll be able to use that again if it changes. Understand the actual disease diagnosis they have. Ask the questions of your doctor. Research online. Go to the library. Or I think libraries are closed right now, but you can order books. Go to trainings like this, or ask for more trainings, but actually learn about the type of dementia your loved one might have. Learn people's favorite songs. This is something I teach to our staff, is to learn the old music. People cannot learn the new music. It's really hard to learn, but learn some of those old songs and use them, because people remember those old songs. It's part of that long-term memory that is locked in, and they can sing them over and over and over again. Learn what someone did as a child. Learn some of those old things, as people's brains are dying and the memories of the recent days are going by the wayside. Those older memories are coming forefront. So all those memories of teenage years, of childhood years, things might be said that you're like, wow, where did that come from? That might be something that happened as a child. So learning about that person, as what they did as a child. Get to know what is important to them, or what was important to them in their life. Maybe something as simple as they really have a desire to be around horses. So, maybe that is something that they did as a young adult. And they're going back, and that's where they are now as that young adult, and they keep talking about horses, and maybe going out and to see horses. I know at Lydia's house we have pictures of horses on the wall, and one of our residents says, "Those are mine, and I raised them all, and look at that great barn that I put up." And so those pictures and those things trigger memories that they had a long time ago. Learn people's favorite foods and favorite snacks. Doesn't matter, ice cream, it's up here, but ice cream is one of the best snacks and bribery tools you can use, because ice cream is soft, it's sweet, it tastes good, it's easy going down. So for a lot of people, ice cream is a very good way to get some calories in somebody if they're not eating well. But learn those favorite foods and snacks that people like. And if that's all they eat for a day, it's fine. You want to get through your day. Learn their favorite color. What are some of the colors that people used to have? Maybe they need to wear that. Make sure they are feeling good in the clothes that they are wearing. And use humor. Humor is always something that is going to be beneficial to you. And it's got to be kind of silly, because that as the brain, again, is shrinking, a lot of the brain can only accept things that are simplistic. So all of the stuff that's really hard to understand type of humor, it's really hard to understand. So humor that is simple is really easy for people to understand. I'm not a big person for cartoons, but a lot of people with dementia really like to watch things like Scooby-Doo. It's funny, it's simple, they get it. So the simpler the concepts, and people will get it, and you can get a chuckle out of somebody. If you can get somebody with dementia to have a hearty laugh, that's pretty good. Yourself, being very flexible with the person you're interacting with. If you're not flexible, if you're rigid, you're going to have a harder time. You're going to be stressed. You're going to be upset. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to have to be flexible. The person with dementia is going to forget a lot of times what they just did. You're going to remember it for a lot of moments and a lot of days even. So you have to learn how to be flexible in the moment. And it doesn't matter if they have sometimes 2 coats on, or 2 pair of pants, or whatever. Sometimes you just have to let some of those things go and kind of look at the big picture. Learn triggers to behaviors. If you're seeing anybody that's having or interacting with somebody that's having a behavior that is not appropriate, or you're not happy with that type of behavior, what is it? What's the trigger that happened just before to make that behavior happen? And maybe look at what that trigger is and get rid of it. Sometimes could be food, it could be a smell, it could be the look of somebody, it could be somebody else. Kind of look at what those triggers could be. Some more tools for your toolbox. Leave your problems at home. And those of you who are at home, you've really got to wake up in the day and just be present in the moment. Because if you're having a challenge, you've really got to be there and be in the moment for that person you're interacting with. And then you're going to have plan A and plan B. If plan A doesn't work as far as maybe a breakfast, maybe plan B will be cookies. If they're not going to eat their breakfast as you prepared it, maybe it's just cookies right now. Or you make milkshakes, and you can put a lot of things in milkshakes that will have nutritional value for somebody if they won't eat. Again, jump into your world. This is probably the biggest one for everybody to know, is be a part of the world that they're in. Maybe they're in 1950, 1940, 1920, and the things that they are saying to you make absolutely no sense. Jump into that world and be a part of it. It's kind of like acting. And so you might be acting all day. I mean, unless it's not harmful or hurtful or tragic, just be a part of it. One day I walked into Lydia's house and a lady said, "Oh my gosh, you made it." And I said, "Yeah, I did." And she said, "Well, how was your drive down from Seattle?" And I jumped into her world and I said, "It was great. Traffic was little. I had no problems and I got here just fine." And so she invited me to sit down and have coffee with her and tell her all about my trip from Seattle. Well, I hadn't come from Seattle, but in her mind, I knew her in Seattle. And it's all it is jumping into that world and being a part of it. Don't argue. You're never going to win. So jump into the world and just be there present for them. Get to know if they were a positive person in their life or a negative person. That goes back to that personality, getting to know their personality. Were they always positive? Were they always kind of negative and looking at the glass as half empty as opposed to half full? You'll have to work with those kind of tools, and how can you do your interactions with that person who's always going to be negative. That can be very draining on a caregiver. And practice good listening skills, because one of the things we have to do is listen very well. We may not get all the words that that person is trying to communicate to us. It may be they're skipping every fourth word and you're just getting bits and pieces of a conversation. And you're going to have to sometimes re-say it back to them and listen again and see if it's the right thing so you get the right gist of what they're saying. Because if you keep saying, "I have no idea what you're talking about," you're going to frustrate that other person, and then you're both going to be frustrated. Approach the relationship as a friend, not as a spouse or a sister or a brother or a caregiver. But as a friend, you're going to have to take it back if you're married to somebody and take it back to that courtship days as their friend. They may not recognize you as their wife. They might. But if you approach the relationship as how do you treat your best friend, and your expectations kind of go a little bit down a little bit. You don't have such high expectations that this person has to be able to do these things. Use some therapeutic fibbing. We practice that here. And again, that's part of jumping into their world. If they say the sky is brown, the sky is brown. Sometimes when we had all that smoke surrounding our campus, we just kept calling it foggy. It's a foggy day. We can't go outside, because they didn't understand about the smoke outside. But we have to kind of jump into their world. People often want to get up and go to work. And we just have to make up a story and say that, work called. The plant is closed for the day, the boiler went down, the car has a flat tire, whatever you can use, because they're back in days when they were working and they think they have to get up and go to work. Having empathy that they are trying the best they can. And as a spouse, this is probably one of the hardest things you're going to be able to do and to practice on a routine basis, because you have very high expectations as their spouse that they should be able to do this and they should be able to do that well when you tell them. Sometimes they can't follow directions. They can't follow what you're trying to tell them. Sometimes you have to show them. So you have to really have that empathetic personality about yourself just to help them get through their day. And it's hard. And then if you find it to be, it's very, really challenging for you, you might want to get some help. Do not be judgmental of this resident's family, this person's family. Sometimes families have dynamics that do not all get along, and this is something that we talk about at Lydia's house, that all of our families are on different pages. Families don't always think of the resident or that person in the best light. They all have their ideas of what it should look like. Some families accept the disease of Alzheimer's disease. Some families think there's nothing wrong with the person. So again, it's how we need to we're focused on the person and what's going on with them. And again, appropriate communication. Make sure your communication with the person is appropriate. It's short, it's sweet, it's to the point. Sometimes you even have to use gestures, because you may be able to say, "Come to the dinner table," and they may have no idea what you're doing or talking about. You may have to gesture them to say, come to the dinner table so that that person will know what you want. Do you want a drink? You may have to use a gesture with, I'm drinking out of a cup. So sometimes you have to look at the communication you're doing and change the way you're communicating to somebody. A dry erase board works wonderful for someone who doesn't hear well. You just need to print it in, with a black dry erase marker so that they can read it, and not too much words, because too many words get convoluted and confusing. And then you just value the moment you have with this person. Sometimes just living in that moment for whatever it is what you've got for the whole day. Value that moment, whether it's a walk, you're feeding the ducks, you're sharing a hamburger, whatever it is, value that moment, because that moment's gone. Once it's gone, people with dementia will not remember that moment the next day. They might remember the feelings they had when they were with you in that moment, and then you might see that as repeated because of the feelings. So some other things in your toolbox: use phrases as "show me" or "tell me about that," because you may not understand the gist of what they're trying to communicate, and you may have to put your hand on their arm and say, "Show me what you mean. Show me about that. Tell me what are you trying to tell me?" And you might get a few words out of them, and you may not get any, but again, you might try using a dry erase board. Hand under hand is a technique that we teach about connecting palms together, and it's a really great way to connect with somebody and have some kind of meaningful connection and get them to do some of the things you're trying to get them to do if they're not responding verbally. It's a very great technique, and you can call me if you have any questions on that. Don't respond in an angry manner to their frustrations. When you respond angry, they get angry. They don't understand why you're frustrated and why you're angry. They have no idea what's going on in your mind. They just know they're frustrated. So sometimes it's easier just to walk away and then wait a few minutes and reapproach. Talking in a soothed tone, not talking fast, talking soft, talking soothing, enough though that they can hear you. Come back and approach later if it's getting frustrating for both of you. Just walk away, and sometimes walking away and coming around the corner will make a difference. Validation is another tool that we use when people are saying, "I got to get home. I got to go home now. I've got to get home." And they're already in their home with you, but they're talking about something else, another place. And when you keep saying "you're home, you're home, you're home," they don't understand that. So what you need to say is, "Tell me about your home. Where is it? What town was it in?" And they might be thinking of a home or a farm that they had 50 years ago with their mother and father. They also use that. Where's mom and dad? And when you tell them that they have died, you have to know the person you're interacting with. But if you tell them that they have died, sometimes they will go into a whirlwind and say, "Well, nobody told me. What happened?" Because they think they're 20, they think they're 15, they think they're young. So in their mind, mom and dad are still alive. Some of the best answers you can say for people who have passed on is, "You know what? I don't know. I haven't seen them today. When I see them, I will let you know." Because that validates that their feelings are being acknowledged. "Tell me about your mom and dad. What do you know about them?" Or "Tell me about them." Use family is another thing. When a lot of times I use family with people, and sometimes you can use this with a spouse as well. But I say, your son or your daughter got you this gorgeous room just to stay with us for the weekend when people want to leave. But you can use that with the spouse and say, "Yeah, I did talk to your mom." It's that therapeutic fibbing. They would like you to stay here for now. And you don't even have to say your mom or your dad. Yeah, your family said they want you to stay here for now. And if they don't recognize you as a spouse, that becomes another huge challenge of what are you going to do about that? Because they don't recognize you as the spouse anymore. They don't recognize you as part of their family, because in their mind, again, they're back 50 years and they're looking at you going, "Who are you?" They forgot. Women usually will forget that they've gotten married, and a lot of times when you ask them their name, they'll go back to their maiden name. So when you get into that situation that they do not recognize you, and it's hit or miss off and on, for the person with the dementia, that creates a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety. It might be a good time to get help in, or a time for that person to move to another place, because it will continue to keep some frustrations in your relationship. So, again, if you have questions about any of this presentation, please give me a call at 541-704-4297. Thank you. Have a great day.